Welcome to Organic Master Gardening, and today we're going to dive into the world of companion planting. Now, whether you're a seasoned gardener or you're just starting out, companion planting can be a real benefit to how you can grow great abundance in your gardens. So let's dive in. Hi, I'm Simon, and today we're going to dive into companion planting, as I've already mentioned. This gardening technique involves planting things together that benefit each other. So let's explore how we can use this technique to increase our productivity and our overall health and ecosystem of our growing spaces. So what is companion planting? Well, it's all about relationships. Some plants help each other to grow by providing nutrients. Others help to repel pests, but they can also help to attract beneficial insects. It's all a great way to improve our ecosystem in our space. Now let's look at the best plant companion pairings, that was difficult to say, that we can adopt and use in our gardens. The first one is tomato and basil. Now this is a classic pair. Not only is it nice to be able to grow them side by side for the benefits of pest control, because the odour of the basil is going to repel quite a lot of them, to be able to pick a ripe tomato and pick a fresh basil leaf, put the two together and eat it, it's just like having a pizza without the base. The basil also helps to improve the flavour of the tomatoes themselves. Then we've got things like carrots and onions, or the allium family in general. So in the garden here I've actually planted rows of carrots between the onions. The onions themselves release a scent that puts things like carrot root fly off the scent of the carrots themselves, so it masks it. So therefore you have a reduction in any issues that you might get with carrot root fly or any other pest come to that. And then we can look at things like beans and corn. Now that's a match made in heaven, because the beans are going to fix nitrogen into the soil, which is what the corn is after, and in return the corn creates a structure for the beans to climb up, so it's a win-win. Another good one is to have cucumbers and radishes together. The radishes will repel insects and be ready to harvest before the cucumbers are, so therefore you've got two crops in one space. Now if we look at something like a nasturtium, it's got two benefits. One, it's got flowers that will attract pollinators, and secondly it also repels pests like squash beetles. Perfect combination to put with pumpkins, butternuts, courgettes or zucchinis, melons, etc. Any squash family and nasturtiums work well. But just as there's good pairings, there's also some bad ones that we want to avoid. So let's have a look at those. Just before I share that with you, I'd just like to ask you something. If you enjoy these videos, would you do me a favour and join the channel? It costs you absolutely nothing. The reason why I'm asking that is because 90% of the viewers that we have aren't actually subscribed. And if you do that, it actually helps our channel no end. Thanks a lot. Now, pairings to avoid are tomatoes and any member of the brassica family. Mainly this is because the brassicas like cabbage, kale, broccoli, that kind of plant compete with the tomato for the nutrients. They're very heavy feeders when it comes to nitrogen, so it's best avoided. Another one to avoid is carrots and dill, funnily enough. I mean, the top look quite similar, but dill actually inhibits the growth of the carrots, so another one to avoid. Beans and onions just don't get along. Onions have a habit of inhibiting the growth of the beans, so again, keep away. Another one is cucumbers and potatoes, because for two reasons. One, they compete for the same kind of nutrients, so that's not a good idea, but also they share the same disease issues. So keeping them apart reduces the incidences of that. And finally, but by no means least, is fennel. In fact, fennel, don't plant it anywhere near any other vegetable. It's got this ability to reduce the growth of any vegetable or plant nearby. So one to avoid. Now here's some tips for you to succeed with your companion planting. The first thing you want to be looking at doing is to plan your garden in advance. So make sure that when you're looking at a bed of tomatoes where you're going to be putting those next year, obviously now it might be a bit too late, allow enough space for that basil to be put by the side of it. If you've already got tomato plants in the garden, you could cheat. You can perhaps go to a garden centre and buy some plants of basil already grown, or even some from the supermarket to pop them in if you haven't already started them from seed. Having said that, growing basil from seed is a pretty easy thing to do. Doesn't take very long. Also, you want to consider the plant's needs. So we want to be looking at making sure that the companion plants that we're going to use can have the same amount of light and water and food requirements as the plant is going next to. Something else we can do is we can rotate our crops, and there's a separate video on the channel that talks about that and how to do it effectively. But the idea is by rotating crops, you won't build up a group of pests in the same spot over a period of time. If we can increase our biodiversity and certainly diversity of our plants, that's going to help us no end. Now in the garden, in various locations, I've got other things that I haven't planted as a companion plant, they've just appeared. Some people will say that that's a weed. Let me give you two examples. The first one is purslane. That's a ground covering plant. It's not a weed as far as I'm concerned, because I can eat it, but also it allows me to keep my soil moist and also cooler in the hot days. Another plant that we have here, again growing naturally, is lamb's quarter. Now the thing about that, it's quite a tall plant. If I have it next to beans, it can act as a support, but again, it's doing me two things. It's keeping the soil moist and sheltered, and at the same time, when I do harvest out those plants, it's full of all kinds of nutrients that I can then put back into the compost, recycle and use again the following year. So companion planting is a wonderful way to increase our ecosystem in our gardens and its overall health. And it can also help us bring in the pollinators that we need, but also the other parasitic insects that we also need to help us control, for example, any issues of aphids on our tomatoes or black fly on our broad beans. Now, as you know here, that we are organic in everything that we do, absolutely no chemicals whatsoever, and we also follow the principle of minimal soil disturbance, and that helps us maintain a healthy, vibrant soil in order for us to grow our own produce. A big part of that is making our own compost, and that alongside companion planting really does give our ecosystem a massive boost. Now if you want to master the art of making your own compost, this video is going to help you no end. But for now, take care and I'll catch you next time.